Tonight, we are coming on the air with police revealing the identity of one of the Gilgo Beach murder victims, how this fits into the pattern of these serial killings that still haven't been fully solved decades later. And chaos in New York City after a super popular Twitch streamer's giveaway event leads to crowds clashing with police officers. We're on the ground there with the latest. And former President Donald Trump tonight is making his first campaign stop since being arraigned on federal charges related to efforts to overturn the 2020 election. What this unprecedented moment means for his upcoming political calendar. Then an exclusive conversation with the woman whose story helped drive the anti-vax movement back in the late 2000s. Now, she's speaking out for the first time about her regrets. That's in tonight's original. Plus, a near miss avoiding what could have been a disastrous moment caught on camera. What we know tonight about a private plane that took off without permission, leading to a very close call on a runway. Hey, everybody, I'm Aaron Gilchrist in for Hallie tonight. And today, police on Long Island, New York, revealing new details about one of the Gilgo Beach murder victims 27 years after she went missing. The Suffolk County DA saying today in a news conference, Jane Doe number 7, who you see here, is Karen Vergata. Vergata was one of 11 bodies found near Gilgo Beach between 2010 and 2011. You see here where some of those bodies were found on this map. But her disappearance actually dates back way farther than that. 15 years earlier, police found other remains of hers miles away at a park on Long Island. Listen to this.
April 20th, 1996, female remains consisting of legs and feet were found on the bayside shore of Fire Island. Approximately 15 years later, on April 11, 2011, additional remains consisting of a skull were discovered at Tobay Beach in Nassau County.
Now, Vergata went missing sometime around Valentine's Day in 1996. She was 34 years old at the time, living in Manhattan. This is the latest break in a case that ran cold for years, really. You might remember, after a decade of searching, police charged this man, Rex Heuermann, last month in 3 of the Gilgo Beach murders. He has pleaded not guilty. But officials are not saying whether they have any suspects in Vergata's disappearance, and they haven't filed any charges in her case at this point either. What they are doing, though, is demanding more DNA evidence from Heuermann to prove his connection to the overall Gilgo crime scene. Stephanie Gosk is joining me now. She's been tracking this story from the beginning. Stephanie, talk to us about how investigators ended up identifying Vergata all these years later and why it took so long.
Sure. I think the most important thing for people to understand is that this case had really gone cold. The overall Gilgo Beach murder case had gone cold until a new DA was elected and a new police commissioner in Suffolk County, and they got together and said, let's start this task force. Let's go back to the beginning. Let's solve this case. Let's look at every bit of evidence and see what we can come up with. And that is why Rex Heuermann is in jail right now awaiting trial on 3 murder charges. The identification today is not part of those charges. He has not been charged with any connection to Karen Vergata at all. We did learn a little bit about Vergata today. We learned, as you said, that she was 34 years old, that she worked as an escort as well, and that the way they identified her is they used genetic, genealogy, really this large public DNA database that's out there to track down who FBI investigators thought would be her family. They then got DNA swabs. They compared the DNA, and there was a match. What is really striking about her case, however, Aaron, is the fact, and you pointed this out, that her remains were first discovered in 1996, and they were partial remains. Her skull was then found 4 miles from Gilgo Beach, and I went out there today, and I got to tell you, I mean, it is close to Gilgo Beach. It is not close to the water where they found them in terms of, like, someone would have had to have deliberately put them there. And we have no answers from investigators on how the remains were separated and so far apart from each other.
Well, I do want to ask you more about what we do know here, and that is that Rex Heuermann has been charged with some of these murders in that area. What do we know about his next hearing? It's set for late September, I understand. What happens next in this case and the investigation?
Sure. Well, there is, as the prosecutor pointed out this week, mountains of evidence in this case. It's been going on for over a decade. There is a large discovery process. I think it was something like two drives or 4 drives with 8 gigabytes or terabytes of information. I mean, just a ton of information that has to be processed and looked at. So it's likely that the trial won't happen until next year. And you also have the possibility of further charges. Those bodies that were discovered on Gilgo Beach, and there were 4 of them, Heuermann has been charged with 3 murders out of those 4, and the prosecutor says they have substantial evidence connecting him with the disappearance of the 4th victim in that bunch that was discovered over a decade ago. So there could be more charges, further complicating the trial process. Aaron.
All right, Stephanie Gosk for us today in New York. Stephanie, thank you. Some more breaking news we're tracking on the chaos in Union Square. This is right in the middle of Manhattan there in New York City tonight. This is during a giveaway event of some sort that a popular Twitch streamer was hosting. You're looking at some live pictures of a much calmer scene now, it would seem. At least we're not seeing the huge crowds we were seeing a little while ago as police have really converged on this area. But you see this was what we saw earlier, just this swarm of people there shoving each other, standing on cars, standing on food trucks, throwing things in some cases. And this all started with, as we said, a social media post, it seems. This is the story that Kai Cenat posted earlier today. The story is now deleted from his account. It was meant to be a big giveaway event, reportedly for a PlayStation or some gift cards, something like that. Our NBC station in New York is reporting just a while ago that Cenat is facing charges actually related to this whole situation. Now, we don't know what caused the chaos that we saw here to break out, but police are asking people to steer clear of this area. We understand the New York City subway system letting people know that a bunch of major train stations would be skipping, or trains would be skipping that station, that subway stop, because of the crazy things that are happening there or were a while ago. Ron Allen is joining us now on the phone as he's made his way to that area, sort of toward Lower Manhattan. Ron, what are you seeing? What are you hearing? What do you know?
Well, there's still an awful lot of people down here, Aaron, and they're trying to disperse them. Huge numbers of police are here, and it's going well, and then it seems to be not going well in other places. You can see there's still some pushing and shoving going on between the police and the crowd. Just a massive amount of people down here about an hour or so ago for this impromptu social media organized giveaway by this influencer. And since then, we've seen a number of arrests. We've seen a number of things thrown around in the air. We've seen, we understand that he was arrested, Kai Cenat was arrested, and we're hoping to get more of a sense from the police of the overall situation. I'm standing on the edge of Union Square. There's a police barricade here. There's a steady stream of people, pedestrians and others, coming away from that area. But as you can see from the aerials over it, there are still a significant crowd there. This could go on for some time. The police are trying to do it section by section, or telling people that this is not going to happen. This giveaway is not going to happen. Word is spreading, and they're just trying to get people to move away. We're standing here with a group of officers, more than a dozen of them. They seem to be going in waves. Some come out, some go in, as they try to just get order here in the heart of Manhattan. I guess that there was some warning about this event. There was obviously a lot of advertising about it, but why things went wrong and how they went wrong is still unclear. It seems as from what we're hearing, as soon as the giveaway was about to start, chaos erupted, and that was about an hour or so or more ago. And here we are again with the police making some arrests. We don't know how many, and just trying to bring some order. And by getting people to just leave this area, at Union Square, as you know, it's a dense area on a good day. There's often protests down here. There's often gatherings down here, and it's peaceful. But today things definitely got out of control for some time, and police are trying to reestablish order. Aaron?
All right. Ron Allen for us in New York City today. Ron, thank you. We appreciate it. Well, in just a couple of hours, former President Trump is going to make his first appearance back on the campaign trail. That's after being arraigned and pleading not guilty to charges related to trying to overturn the 2020 election. He's in Alabama tonight, set to speak at a Republican dinner as the keynote speaker there. Tomorrow, he goes to South Carolina to headline the party's Silver Elephant dinner there. New polling out today has the former president holding a pretty big lead over his opponents in a key state, Iowa, we're talking about here, in the midst of his unprecedented third indictment now. A federal third indictment now. Trump polling at 44% with Ron DeSantis, the Florida governor, at 22% in Iowa, home to the first presidential caucus. Garrett Hake is joining us now. He's been staying on top of this for us. So, Garrett, this poll happened before yesterday's arraignment, obviously, but the reality at this point is that we've seen the former president's legal issues make him more popular with some Republican voters, right? I heard people outside the courthouse yesterday, where you and I both were, yelling that he's even more popular now. We love him even more. You're helping the Trump cause here. What are we expecting tonight?
Well, Aaron, you're exactly right. I expect the former president to lean into his legal battles. I mean, it is really an incredible thing to witness. These are things that would have taken down any number of presidential candidates in any number of cycles that have so far only made Donald Trump stronger, at least in a Republican primary. The fact that he has successfully got the entire Republican Party singing from the same hymnal, that somehow this is the weaponized Department of Justice going after him specifically, has made it very difficult for his rivals to figure out how to get an arm around how to attack him, or even how to draw contrast with him. I want to play for you a little bit of what Ron DeSantis, the Florida governor, said today when he was asked whether or not he thought the 2020 election was stolen. If you squint really hard here, Aaron, you can hear some criticism of Donald Trump. Listen to this.
I've said many times, the election is what it is. All those theories that were put out did not prove to be true. But what I've also said is the way you conduct a good election that people have confidence in, you don't change the rules in the middle of the game.
That is what amounts to a break from Donald Trump, to some contrast with Donald Trump on the issue of whether or not an election was stolen, and federal charges basically against the former president for his efforts on it were appropriate. That's the #1 rival to Donald Trump. And when you look into the polling, you see why this is a problem. In that same New York Times Siena poll, there's some back and forth about the question of, would you still support Donald Trump if he's convicted of a felony? And when you look at these numbers, only 45% of Republicans, this is a Reuters poll, said they would not vote for Donald Trump if he was convicted of a felony. 35% said they would. 35% wins you primaries in most states in a multi-candidate field, Aaron. That's the problem for the rest of these Republicans.
And then there's the potential, Garrett, for another case here, right? Any day now, we do expect that the DA in Fulton County, Georgia, is going to announce one way or the other if her office is going to charge the former president in connection to efforts in that state to overturn election results. At this point, do we have a sense of how soon we might get that decision, how serious any potential charges might be when you compare them to the other charges that are already out there for the former president?
Well, look, we're in the window right now where it could happen next week or the week after. That's sort of the time frame where we expect to see some kind of decision made on this either way. The broad spectrum charges here are the same, but the data points are more specific to Georgia. I think what's interesting about this case are two things. Number one, it has probably the single most famous piece of evidence involving 2020 election interference claims. That's that call to the Georgia Secretary of State where Donald Trump says, I need you to find me all these extra votes. That's going to be a central piece of this case. The other thing that's different is you're going to likely see significantly more defendants in this case. This is a prosecutor who's an expert at RICO cases, sort of broad corruption cases like gang cases. Don't expect it to be just Donald Trump who gets indicted in Georgia if there are indictments in Georgia, Aaron.
All right, Garrett Hake for us today here in Washington. Garrett, thank you.
You bet.
Ukraine tonight claiming a battlefield win on Russian soil after a drone attack appears to have seriously damaged a Russian warship. NBC News has verified the footage you see here, appearing to show the drone zooming toward the Russian ship. The video suddenly cuts out for a second, implying that it exploded when it got close to that vessel. Russia claims that it destroyed the drones and stopped the attack, but more video verified by NBC News tells a different story. You can see the ship here listing to one side. It's being tugged into a nearby port. That indicates this ship has some pretty serious damage. NBC's Matt Bradley is covering that for us and joins us now. Matt, the last few weeks, we've seen this attack on the warship there, 3 separate drone attacks in Moscow. Talk to us about the significance here for both sides, both symbolically and for the actual physical war effort.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Aaron, this is a huge boon for Ukraine and a humiliation for Russia. As you've seen over the past couple of weeks, as you mentioned, it's been humiliation after humiliation for Russia, not on the battlefields in Ukraine, where it's been essentially stagnant, but in terms of Ukraine's ability to reach out into the Russian mainland and attack targets that were thought to be safe. And this was all happened in Novorossiysk, which is a port that isn't in Crimea. It's not in an occupied area of Ukraine. This is Russia proper, just like Moscow, where there were drone attacks for the past several weeks. This is something that really goes to show that Ukraine can extend its firepower into Ukraine proper. And this was a port that the Russians had actually been moving ships from Crimea. If you remember, this is that peninsula in southern Ukraine that was occupied by the Russians when they last invaded back in 2014. They were moving ships from there, according to British intelligence, back in September, because it was so unsafe, and moving them to this city in the mainland. So this just goes to show not just that the Ukrainians can strike Russia proper, but that this safe-guarded area, that this place where these ships were supposed to be safe, was actually well within Ukrainian targeting. Aaron?
At the same time, Matt, there are these sort of domestic issues that Russia is dealing with. I know a Russian court today sentenced Alexei Navalny, the well-known dissident there in Russia, to another 19 years in prison there. He was already in the middle of a 12-year sentence on other charges that the opposition called bogus. Talk to us about the impact here of this new sentence. What sort of message is Putin trying to send by imprisoning one of his strongest critics for another 2 decades almost?
Yeah, I mean, the message is chilling, and it has been chilling for the past couple of years that Navalny has been sentenced to these draconian prison terms. And this just goes to show, and I think when we hear from people who are fans or who are followers of Navalny in Russia, they say that it's very clear that Navalny will never be free as long as Putin is in power. So really, we're seeing an extension of a detainment that had been going on for quite a while and that is set to go on. He is such a risk and such a threat to the elite in the Kremlin that it seems as though the Kremlin is determined to keep him in jail. And he said as much publicly in the past couple of days. Aaron?
All right, Matt Bradley with us tonight. Matt, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Let's turn to the weather now, where emergency crews in Tennessee are out rescuing people who are trapped in their homes by some serious flooding. You can see in the pictures here, water up to doors of buildings, up to the doors of homes, cars almost fully underwater in some cases. Practically no matter where you live, you're going to be hit with some type of weather this weekend. The Northeast and Midwest could see more severe storms. That brings that heavy rain, the wind, the hail we've seen in some cases, creating some pretty dangerous conditions. And then from Southern California all the way to the Florida Panhandle, almost 50 million people under heat alerts as temps ramp back up again. Multiple records could be shattered over this weekend. So let's bring in meteorologist Bill Cairns now to walk us through this. Bill, really a mixed bag of all things weather this weekend. Kind of walk us through it. Explain it for us.
Yeah, Aaron, we'll start with the most severe, the most life-threatening, and that's flash flooding. And that's taking place once again in areas of Vermont and upstate New York, areas that have been soaked storm after storm all summer long. So Rutland, Vermont's under a flash flood warning. Areas just to the north of Oneonta here near Cobleskill on Interstate 88 there is under a flash flood warning, and a couple there to the north. Severe thunderstorms are possible through the evening. Once the sun sets, they'll start to die down, but you can see how widespread they are, especially the Capital District northwards in this area. Very heavy rain in central Vermont. So here's a look at a couple of the spots. Albany looks like it missed the storms. There's that big storm to the south of Albany heading north of Catskill. This one just barely missed Saratoga Springs. Of course, the racetrack is in session right now, and hundreds of thousands of people go there every summer. And then as far as severe weather goes, also Vermont. Tomorrow we go into the middle of the country, Kansas all the way up to Omaha, and then Chicago on Sunday all the way into Indianapolis, back into Lexington. So Aaron, yes, the southern half of the country is hot, and if you're in the northern half of the country, likely you're dealing with storms.
All right, Bill Cairns, we appreciate the heads up, Bill. Thank you. Right now, writers are heading back to the negotiating table with the Hollywood studios, the major studios there, nearly 100 days since their strike started. But they are skeptical of making any big breakthroughs here. Why? Well, in an email to members, the Writers Guild of America writing, "We won't prejudge what's to come, but playbooks die hard." The studios shot back, calling the union's statements unfortunate, insisting, in its words, the only playbook is getting people back to work. Now, this happens as the head of one of the biggest studios, Warner Brothers, reports on the company's earnings call that the strike saved the company more than $100 million so far. Dana Griffin joins me now from L.A. Dana, where do things stand now? Are there any indications that the writers and the studios can actually make some progress in today's talks?
Well, Aaron, no indications at this hour, but we are monitoring for updates. But it is encouraging considering that they are back at the negotiating table 95 days since writers went on strike. But I got to show you this video from earlier today because it's very telling. Take a look. This is what we saw outside of NBC Universal Studios in Hollywood. Hundreds of actors and writers on the picket lines. And as you can see, they're in the streets. They were helped by DOT and police to block off some lanes. But we have not seen something like this before, if at all. And I was told today that this was the first sanctioned joint strike with both groups outside of NBC Universal Studios. And they say that this is essentially a message to our company, which I have to mention NBC Universal is our parent company and is also part of the negotiations when it comes to the studios. The groups that are picketing say that they feel the construction that has been going on outside of our studios has impeded their ability to show up in large numbers. And so they wanted to make a point today. I reached out to NBC Universal for comment, and they tell us, quote, from day one, we've supported the Guild's right to demonstrate at entrances to our property and have actively been looking for solutions to increase safe access. It also went on to say we have hired DOT officers daily to help control traffic, stopped construction in key areas, and created new walkways connecting our busiest gates and added new rest areas with tents and water, all in support of those demonstrators. Now, getting back to the writers' negotiation, I actually spoke with one writer today and asked if he was at all optimistic that they could reach a deal. Here's his response.
I think the attitude is cautious optimism. Eventually, we will reach a deal with the studios because strikes end. If they continue to refuse to engage with us and refuse to negotiate, we will remain on strike, period.
Now, whether that deal is reached later today, in the coming weeks or months, Aaron, remains to be seen.
All right. Dana Griffin for us in our L.A. bureau today. Dana, thank you. A new jobs report today showing hiring in the U.S. is slowing down, but still sturdy, fueling hopes with investors that the Fed may leave interest rates alone, at least at its next meeting. The economy added 187,000 jobs last month, slightly fewer than expected for the second month in a row. But economists say it could be good news because the overall number of layoffs is actually going down, signaling a stabilizing jobs market. Meanwhile, the unemployment rate fell to 3.5%, nearing the lowest level in the last 50 years. Brian Chung is joining us now to walk us through this. Help us understand the numbers here, Brian. Where did we see the most growth? Give us a sense of what it all means in the big picture for Americans, for the average American.
Yeah, Aaron, as is the case with economic data, there's a lot of numbers, so let's contextualize it. As you mentioned, 187,000 jobs. That's how many were added in the month of July. That's a little bit of a slower pace, or a little bit of a faster pace than the 185,000 that we saw in the month of June. But as you mentioned, the number that we're really focusing on is the unemployment rate at 3.5%, which, by the way, is hovering near over 50-year lows. So this is a pretty good picture when you're taking a look at, well, we're deep into the Federal Reserve deliberately raising interest rates to try to slow this economy. The unemployment rate, though, not spiking up. So where did we see the job gains in the month? When you take a look at leisure and hospitality, adding 17,000 in the month. Retail trade, think of jobs at the mall, adding 8,500 jobs. And by the way, healthcare added about 60,000 jobs in the month, but not all sectors were beneficiaries. Take a look at professional and business services. These are white-collar jobs, likely in cubicles, contracting by about 8,000, something we're going to have to continue to watch, Aaron.
And Brian, I know Wall Street was looking forward to this jobs report, right? We knew that it could mean some things about what the Fed was going to do with this overall majority, 85% of traders expecting the central bank to hold rates steady at the next meeting that's coming up, next month, right?
Yeah, well, and this comes after their last meeting in July where they raised interest rates by a quarter point. But what they're really focused on, well, yes, they're looking at that 187,000 figure that I just showed you. But this is the figure they really want to dial into, 4.4%. What does that mean? That's how much more people were getting paid in July of this year compared to July of last year. The reason why they're looking at this is because it tells you something about inflationary pressures. If employers are paying this out, do they pass it on to the consumer? Well, it doesn't appear so because the overall rate of inflation is 3%. So this is good news. We've only seen this trend happen as of the summer. The amount that your wallet is growing by, it's outpacing the pace of price increases for things at the store in terms of those price tags. That's certainly good news to see wages outpacing inflation, Aaron.
All right, Brian Chung for us, breaking it down today. Brian, thank you. Appreciate it. The FDA expected to decide by tomorrow whether to approve the first pill to treat postpartum depression. Now, it's taken daily for 2 weeks and has shown promising signs in clinical trials. Women with severe depression say that symptoms improved as early as 3 days after taking the first pill. Now, this medication could really increase access for mothers suffering from postpartum depression because it can be taken at home. The treatment that's already approved is actually an injection that requires a hospital stay, which for a lot of mothers is just not feasible. Now, it's important to note about 1 in 8 women experience symptoms of postpartum depression. I want to bring in NBC News medical contributor Dr. Kavita Patel now to help us understand what's happening here. Dr. Patel, it's good to see you. Appreciate you being here. Help us understand, how big of a game changer is this new pill?
Oh, it's a huge game changer because, as you mentioned, the previous treatment that all we have available to us is an injection, 2.5 days in the hospital, and not to mention the fact that it doesn't last potentially past 30 days. So having something that you can, one, take it home while you're trying to deal with the newborn. And keep in mind, for postpartum depression, symptoms can vary. It can be anything from kind of anxiety, sleeping disorders, to even having these feelings of not attaching to your baby. It can present days to even months after you deliver. So this is a major deal to be able to do it and have a 2-week treatment. And so far, as you mentioned, we know that the symptoms, at least, and the symptoms can be relieved as soon as 3 days, and it hopefully lasts even weeks after that.
Yeah, which would be such a tremendous help,
Yes.
I know. So we said that the FDA is likely going to approve this, we think. What are some of the things that the panel would be looking at as it makes that decision on approval?
Yeah, the biggest thing with the Food and Drug Administration is it safe and is it effective? So when we talk and look back at this, every drug has side effects. So in terms of safety profile, we usually expect to see some of what we do see with zuranolone. That's the name of the oral pill. Things like potentially some nausea, some dizziness. All of those side effects are weighed against the benefits they can provide. And then, is it effective? And we just talked about how in the trials we saw an improvement in symptoms just days after. The trials only went to 45 days, and they're going to watch these moms to see if the effects last longer than that. And you can't breastfeed while you're taking this medication. So all of those things are going to come together, but I do expect it to be approved and to potentially see it as available to mothers as soon as the next several weeks. So it's that important.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Dr. Patel, we appreciate you walking us through this. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Coming up, a major break in the case in the death of a gay man outside a New York City gas station. What we're learning right now, that's coming up in our 5 things. Plus, there's more trouble for Wells Fargo, why the bank is being accused of opening fake accounts for dozens of consumers. That NBC News exclusive next. Emergency rooms in multiple states being forced to shut down tonight. We'll tell you why in our 5 things. First, though, tonight we are learning just how close 2 planes almost came to disaster. Take a look at this. The photos you're seeing here, this is a screen grab from a video inside a JetBlue cockpit as the plane was landing in Boston. This was back in February. You see there highlighted a Learjet crossing right in front of it, trying to take off. The JetBlue pilots quickly pulled up, circled around the airport there. The NTSB says the private plane took off without permission. And as you can see by this map, the 2 runways intersect. Obviously, this comes as we've seen some other troubling flight issues this summer. A few days ago, passengers on a Delta Airlines plane were forced to exit on the emergency slides after that plane's tire popped when it landed. And then there was this scene. This is also at a Boston airport where a United plane clipped the wing of a Delta plane. This is on the tarmac. Just some of the close calls on runways and in the skies that we've been seeing around the country as of late. Let's bring in Steve Patterson now. Steve, what else do we know about what happened in that February close call and what's going to happen next year?
Yeah, close call, unbelievable story. This is February 27th, so we're getting the final report now. But as far as we can tell, and from that report, the 63-year-old pilot is kind of in the final process before he's getting lined up on the runway. And that is what he's cleared for. He's talking to air traffic control. They're telling him basically that, yeah, you can take your plane out, you can get lined up. And somehow, some way, he misinterprets that as you are clear to take off when and clearly he wasn't, and he admits that. And so he takes off, leading to this close call, blocking the runway, leading to almost a 30-foot danger zone area where, thankfully, the JetBlue pilot is able to execute a maneuver to pull up suddenly so these two planes don't collide with each other. The pilot did reach out to the NTSB. He sent them a statement. I can read it to you. He said simply this, quote, "I cannot understand what happened to me during the clearance. The only thing that comes to mind is that the cold temperature in Boston affected me. I was not feeling completely well, and I had a stuffed nose. My apologies." This pilot didn't know anything was wrong until he was cleared to land in Fort Lauderdale, where the flight destination, the final destination was. Hadn't even known that he had caused this situation. Obviously very apologetic. We haven't heard if there's going to be any disciplinary action, but this is part of a larger study and investigation by these flight agencies looking at why this is happening so often. One of the big theories is there's been so much turnover in the traffic control center as far as pilots go and co-pilots and staff since the pandemic, and a lot of pilots are coming back, a lot are being cycled out, a lot have retired, that it may be leading to more of these situations, something to keep an eye on, but thankfully this was just a close call. Aaron?
Yeah, some real food for thought here, though, about who's flying and who's directing and how to make sure things are as safe as possible. Steve Patterson for us today. Steve, thank you. Let's get you over to the 5 things our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, police sources saying a suspect was arrested in the death of O'Shea Sibley, a gay man who was stabbed to death at a gas station in Brooklyn, New York last weekend. They said that the suspect turned himself in at a police station in New York. Investigators are still determining whether this was a hate crime. Number 2, more than 40 people saying accounts were mysteriously opened in their names at Wells Fargo. That includes one man who is suing the company now for stealing his private information, saying he never even had a Wells Fargo account, but he discovered one registered to him with thousands of dollars in it. A Wells Fargo spokesperson denied allegations of illegal activity. Number 3, defense attorneys for the suspect charged with killing 4 University of Idaho students saying their client was out driving alone around the time of the murders. They said going on nighttime drives is just something he likes to do, and that they'll try to back up the alibi with witness testimony. Number 4, some hospitals and clinics around the country shut down services because of a cyber attack. The company that operates the hospitals and clinics saying it is investigating and trying to get things back up and running ASAP. Number 5, the universities of Oregon and Washington expected to join the Big Ten Conference. That is bad news for the Pac-12. A former college sports powerhouse that's been around for more than 100 years now, but it could soon be made up of just 4 schools. All right, stick around. When we come back, the so-called Flu Shot Cheerleader went viral about 14 years ago in the anti-vax movement, and now she is speaking out in an exclusive interview. That's next in tonight's Original. Now we want to bring you today's Original with in-depth reporting on a topic we've been keeping an eye on. And tonight, we're taking you back in time to the late 2000s when this woman went viral after claiming a flu shot may have caused her strange injury. Reports later outed her, calling her a fake, but her story had already taken off at that point. And now she's speaking out for the first time, sharing whether she's had any regrets and what she wants people to know now about the anti-vax movement as it grows in popularity today. She spoke to NBC's Brandy Zadrozny.
You might not remember Desiree Townsend, but what about the Flu Shot Cheerleader, a 2009 media sensation and early viral meme?
This bill was assigned with nothing goes now too.
She claimed she'd been injured by a seasonal flu shot, that it caused a twisted, jerking walk that disappeared when she ran or went backwards. The anti-vaccine movement was struggling, but saw an opportunity and embraced her as its new poster girl.
That's Desiree. Hi, nice to meet you. Desiree's not going to talk to you.
But they disappeared when Desiree was outed as a supposed faker.
Were you faking it? Definitely not. Unfortunately, I know the symptoms look bizarre.
Now, 14 years later, she's speaking out for the first time since the ordeal, motivated by the rise in anti-vaxxers in a post-pandemic world. and hoping to warn others who might get caught up in what she calls the anti-vaccine PR machine.
In the end of the day, these people are just going to use you.
COVID-19 wasn't on anybody's minds in 2009, but the country was in the grips of a different pandemic.
We have an update tonight on the swine flu virus.
Swine flu outbreak.
Swine flu death.
While health officials encouraged the public to get an H1N1 vaccine, a group of activists, led by an actress, was doing the opposite.
Without a doubt in my mind, I believe vaccinations triggered Evan's autism. So I think they need to wake up and stop hurting our kids.
Those false theories about vaccines had been debunked, but Desiree's story was making the rounds.
It is one of the most talked about stories we've ever had on Inside Edition.
A pretty cheerleader ambassador for an NFL team, strangely disabled by a vaccine, was ratings gold. And Jenny McCarthy's organization, Generation Rescue, wanted to use it to bring attention to their cause. A crusade spreading the disproven theories that vaccines caused autism and that unconventional treatments could cure it.
I was young, I was 25, I needed help, and I just had these people come to me and said, well, we'll give you that help, but here's the cost. You have to believe what we believe.
Generation Rescue asked Desiree to star in an anti-vaccine documentary.
You need to sit up. Come on, just for a second.
It was never made, but the footage was left with Desiree, who shared it with NBC News. They took her to Dr. Rashid Buttar, a controversial osteopath popular for his advertised miracle cures that could supposedly detox patients.
Everything's going to be better, that the world will be amazing.
The unconventional treatments seemed to alleviate her symptoms, at least initially.
You're a miracle worker.
Anti-vaccine activists claimed victory. And in the Generation Rescue footage, they strategized about Desiree's future, even calling her the next Jenny McCarthy.
She's going to be able to help a lot of people. She's going to be able to make a huge ruckus.
But back home, when the cameras were off, Desiree still felt sick.
When you have nothing left, no other option, of course you're going to turn to anybody who would come to you and say, we can help you. I just didn't realize what the cost of that help was.
We reached out to Jenny McCarthy for comment and didn't hear back. Former Generation Rescue president Stan Kurtz told us via text he's been, quote, out of this space for a long time and didn't respond to further questions. Dr. Rashid Buttar died in May. His family didn't respond to requests for comment. And according to her medical records, Desiree continued to seek treatment for her condition. But then a series of new reports cast doubt on her story. One from Inside Edition was most damning. It showed Desiree playing with her dogs, walking normally and driving.
We've been trying to reach you and you have not been returning our phone calls.
Oh, I'm sorry.
What's going on? It looks like you've made a complete recovery.
Well, I don't want to say complete recovery. I still have a lot of cognitive issues.
With that, much of the country had decided, it seemed, that the whole thing had been a hoax, and Generation Rescue dropped her.
I want people to know that I did not fake an illness. I am not a scammer. I am not a hoaxer. I'm not anti-vaccine. I'm not a liar.
But by then, the impact of Desiree's story was out of her control. Doctors and public health officials at the time warned about the power of a story like Desiree's. Dr. Paul Offit, director of the Vaccine Education Center at Philadelphia's Children's Hospital, discussed one account of Mac's vaccine hesitancy in an interview with PBS.
I spoke recently at a high school near here. There were about 200 people in the audience, and I asked them how many had gotten the influenza vaccine, and about half raised their hands. Of the half that didn't raise their hands, they said they didn't get it because on YouTube they saw a Redskins cheerleader say that she had gotten the vaccine and had a so-called dystonic reaction.
Now, almost a decade and a half later, he says anti-vaxxers still use personal anecdotes to boost their claims, whether they're true or not.
We're humans. We're compelled by story. We're not so compelled by statistics. We're not so compelled by data. So if you do studies showing that the influenza vaccine doesn't cause what you're seeing with Desiree Jennings, that's not nearly as powerful as her saying that it did.
And Desiree, pulled into the whirlwind back then, now regrets her impact.
If I caused anyone to not receive a vaccine or put their children at risk or themselves at risk, yes, I do feel an immense amount of guilt for that, but I really hope and pray that that didn't happen.
Desiree says her moment in the anti-vaccine spotlight has cost her jobs, relationships, and her reputation. And she no longer believes a vaccine is what caused her health problems.
I think I was already showing symptoms of this autoimmune disease. It's just that all of these variables came together in a perfect storm, and the timing looked like it was a vaccine, but it was not. It was correlation, not causation.
Desiree turned towards science. She graduated in 2019 from the University of California, Irvine, with a bachelor's degree in biochemistry and molecular biology. When the COVID vaccine became available, she took it, and a booster. But the COVID pandemic brought out hundreds of other people like Desiree, posting unverified accounts of strange reactions attributed, they said, to the vaccines. Generation Rescue shut down in 2019, but new leaders and organizations took its place, this time stoking fears over COVID vaccines. Now, Desiree hopes she can set the record straight on vaccines and warn others from joining the anti-vaccine movement. What would you say to people who get wrapped in to this industry?
I would tell them to run, because they're never going to benefit from that. You're going to be used.
Brandy Zadrozny, NBC News.
It is a fascinating story considering today's environment. You can read more of this reporting on NBCnews.com right now. Brandy Zadrozny has a great story written on the site for you to check out right now. Coming up, Simone Biles about to do something she has not done in 2 years. We're going to tell you what it is later in the local. Plus, a close call, I should say, at a theme park. What the park says caused this ride to stop right in its tracks, stranding a lot of people way up high. That's next. It was one of the deadliest school shootings in U.S. history. We're talking about the Parkland, Florida school shooting. It was reenacted today as part of a civil lawsuit brought by the families of some of the victims. Ballistics experts firing up to 139 shots at the school today during this reenactment of that 2018 tragedy. Technicians recording the sound of the gunfire, trying to capture what that officer, Scott Peterson, heard during that 6-minute attack. The families are accusing Peterson of failing to protect their loved ones, and they're seeking unspecified damages. He was acquitted in June of felony child neglect and negligence for failing to act during the shooting. That shooting left 17 people dead, 14 students and 3 staff members. The shooter, a former student, was sentenced to life in prison. That was in 2021. Sam Brock has more now from Parkland.
For all day now, there has been a reenactment going on outside of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, where I am standing in the middle of the road. This has been closed throughout the day. You look at all the police lights behind me. They are just now opening things up. But the real issue here, 2 things going on unrelated here in Parkland. One of them, the fact that this reenactment contained live ammunition being used on an AR-15 type of rifle, the same kind that the shooter used on that tragic day of 2018 Valentine's Day. Why are they doing all this? As you said, it's because of a civil lawsuit against Scott Peterson, who is the school resource officer who was found by a jury here to be not guilty of felony child neglect. But the parents in Parkland still believe that he showed cowardice and did not step in and go into that 1200 building as kids were being killed. And they want him to pay literally for that. Now, the question becomes, why is this still going on? Because it's still a crime scene, and they are still gathering that reenactment and simulation to understand whether or not Peterson would have been able to hear where the shots were coming from. He said he could not tell that day. The thing is, though, you have 600 to 1,000 kids that were piling out of the school, cars in the parking lot. None of that was there today. So it really does beg the question, would this have been an accurate simulation? At the same time, an extraordinary event today with 9 delegates, or I should say 9 members of the congressional delegation, many from Florida, but also California, New York, and Pennsylvania, touring the hallways of Stoneman Douglas. It looks exactly the same right now as it did 5.5 years ago, which is to say there's blood-stained issues all over the hallways. You have bullet holes. You also have shattered glass and the signs of bullets where the shooter tried to go down from the 3rd floor and shoot outside. It didn't penetrate because it's hurricane-force windows. But these are the conditions these lawmakers are going in there and trying to understand the depth of this tragedy and also what more they can do, because Florida did lead the way when it came to a reform package here, whether it's red flag laws or also raising the age for getting long-range guns, long guns, I should say, to 21 years old, other things around mental health services and coordination between agencies when it comes to threat assessment. They're trying to export those plans that have already worked here in Florida throughout the federal government and see if they can get lawmakers in Congress to act as well Will that happen? That's the big question that remains to be seen. In Parkland, Sam Brock, NBC News. Back to you.
Our thanks to Sam there. NBC News covers hundreds of stories every day, and because you couldn't possibly read, watch, or listen to all of them, our bureaus have done it for you. This is what is going on in their regions. We call it The Local. Out of the Midwest Bureau, the most decorated gymnast ever is back. Simone Biles, set to compete for the first time in 2 years. That'll happen tomorrow in Illinois. This is a qualifying meet for the national championships. The last time Biles competed was at the Tokyo Olympics, where she won 2 medals and then withdrew to focus on her mental health. Many see tomorrow's meet as her first step toward competing in the 2024 Olympics. Also from our Midwest Bureau, another close call at a theme park. This roller coaster in Ohio stopping mid-track right before the big drop, just below the hill there. Riders had to get out of the coaster cars and walk down a bunch of steps on the side. You see them there walking from a helicopter view. The park says there was a mechanical issue and everyone was able to get down safely. And out of our Northeast Bureau, an 87-year-old woman fought off a home intruder and then she fed him. She said she did that because he said he was, quote, awfully hungry. She said she called 911 while he was leaving. Police say they quickly found the teenager. They charged him with a few crimes, including underage drinking. Well, still to come, how one robotics company is actually helping to create new jobs for humans. Well, the robot revolution is here, and with it, of course, are fears that automated technology will take away jobs from millions of working humans. But the companies at the forefront of this revolution argue the opposite, that their technology will only create jobs for humans, and better jobs at that. Companies like Chipotle, for example, already using this sort of tech. Take a look at this robot device here, helping to prepare the chain's trademark guacamole. It removes the peel, pitting the avocado there, even slicing it, and then a human employee jumps in to finish the job. Well, it's not just food prep. Advocates of robot tech say that the possibilities really are endless, with a big opportunity to turn delivery drivers into drone pilots and robot technicians. You're looking at one company's tech that does just that. CNBC's Kate Rogers is following this story and joins us now from, I think, the San Francisco area. So, Kate, you've been looking into these companies, seeing how they're operating, what they're doing. What's their plan to revolutionize how we work?
Hey, Aaron. Yeah, we're here at Zipline in South San Francisco. The company is using robotics to change the way deliveries are made. It says to make them both more efficient and more environmentally friendly. Workers here at their manufacturing facility in San Francisco are working on parts for their fleet of autonomous delivery drones that have delivered everything from COVID vaccines to hospitals to e-commerce packages for customers of Walmart. Take a listen to the company's CEO.
Before, we were using a human to do one delivery at a time. Now we're training that human to maintain and manage a fleet of robots, so that human can now do 50 deliveries in an hour rather than 5. And that enables us to pay that human a lot more.
Zipline is looking to add 100 workers to its ranks, focusing on robotics, not just making them, but also running all of the logistics, because that's also done and managed in-house by their team here. So creating many jobs on that front as they look to kind of change the way that these deliveries are made. Aaron, back over to you.
So at the same time, Kate, you know, we've talked to regular folks who are a little bit skeptical, right, about the long-term effects here. I get that the company is going to be more efficient in this way, maybe even save some money and hire some folks. But how does this all really benefit workers and not just eventually replace them like they're just temp workers while this technology is being developed?
Yeah, there's no doubt that certain jobs, of course, will be displaced by technology. But one example of how this could benefit workers is exactly what you talked about in the intro. The restaurant industry, which I cover for us at CNBC, has been extremely challenged in not only attracting but retaining workers to its ranks, because it's just a tough labor market right now. So the avocado is just one example of how they're testing out ways to make this work a little bit better for their employees. As you can see, Vivu Labs avocado, it will peel and prep those avocados to then be be made into guacamole. That is a repetitive task that can be very time-consuming, can also be potentially dangerous for workers. So it takes some of that out of the equation so the workers can jump in when it's time to make that, and they can focus elsewhere on the back-of-house kitchen or interface with guests and make the guest experience a bit more desirable. Because remember, not only is it a tough labor environment, but it's also a tough environment for companies. They need to maintain a competitive edge. Consumers are a bit more cautious about where they're spending their money right now. So you also want the guest experience to be really good. And if you're freeing up workers to focus a bit more on that, speed things up, and make the entire experience a bit better, then that's a win-win for the companies. But one more thing I'd add on the labor shortage is that Vibu Labs co-founder told us that they're also struggling to find workers to actually come to their company and make the robots, right? So there's a labor shortage on the actual restaurant side, and then there's also a talent shortage there. So challenge on both ends. They're looking to jump in and make it a little bit easier for companies like Chipotle to speed things up and have a good experience for guests.
All right, Kate Rogers for us in San Francisco from CNBC. Kate, thank you. That is a wrap for this hour. Our coverage picks up right now. And tonight we are coming on the air with police revealing the identity of one of the Gilgo Beach murder victims. How this fits into the pattern of these serial killings that is still not fully solved. That's after decades. And former President Trump tonight making his first campaign stop since being arraigned on federal charges related to efforts to overturn the 2020 election. What this unprecedented moment means for his upcoming political calendar. Then the FDA set to make a big decision on what could be a groundbreaking drug to treat postpartum depression. We have a doctor here to break down just how much of a game changer this pill could be for people who are struggling with that illness. And chaos in New York City after a super popular Twitch streamer's giveaway leads to some crowds clashing with police. We are on the ground with the latest for you. Plus, writers are back at the negotiating table with some of Hollywood's biggest studios. Why the Writers Guild is not expecting any major breakthroughs nearly 100 days after they walked off the job. Hi, everybody. I'm Aaron Gilchrist in for Hallie tonight. And today, police on Long Island, New York, are revealing new details about one of the Gilgo Beach murder victims 27 years after she went missing. The Suffolk County DA saying today in a news conference that Jane Doe number 7, who you see here, is Karen Vergata. Now, Vergata's was one of 11 bodies found near Gilgo Beach between 2010 and 2011. You see here where some of those bodies were found. Her disappearance, though, dates back way farther than that. 15 years earlier, police found other remains of hers miles away at a park on Long Island. Listen.
On April 20th, 1996, female remains consisting of legs and feet were found on the Bayside shore of Fire Island. Approximately 15 years later, on April 11, 2011, additional remains consisting of a skull were discovered at Tobay Beach in Nassau County.
Vergata went missing sometime around Valentine's Day, 1996. She was 34 years old at the time and living in Manhattan. It's the latest break in a case that ran cold for years. You might remember after a decade of searching, police charged one man, Rex Heuermann. That was last month in 3 of the Gilgo Beach murders. He is pleading not guilty at this point. But officials are not saying whether they have any suspects in Vergata's disappearance, and they haven't filed any charges in her case. What they are doing, though, is demanding more DNA evidence from Heuermann to prove his connection to the overall Gilgo crime scene. NBC's Stephanie Gosk joins me now. She's been tracking this story from the beginning. Stephanie, talk to us about how investigators ended up identifying Vergata all these years later and why it took so long.
Sure. I think the most important thing for people to understand is that this case had really gone cold. The overall Gilgo Beach murder case had gone cold until a new DA was elected and a new police commissioner in Suffolk County, and they got together and said, let's start this task force. Let's go back to the beginning. Let's solve this case. Let's look at every bit of evidence and see what we can come up with. And that is why Rex Heuermann is in jail right now awaiting trial on 3 murder charges. The identification today is not part of those charges. He has not been charged with any connection to Karen Vergata at all. We did learn a little bit about Vergata today. We learned, as you said, that she was 34 years old, that she worked as an escort as well, and that the way they identified her is they used genetic, genealogy, really this large public DNA database that's out there to track down who FBI investigators thought would be her family. They then got DNA swabs. They compared the DNA, and there was a match. What is really striking about her case, however, Aaron, is the fact, and you pointed this out, that her remains were first discovered in 1996, and they were partial remains. Her skull was then found 4 miles from Gilgo Beach, and I went out there today, and I got to tell you, I mean, it is close to Gilgo Beach. It is not close to the water where they found them, in terms of, like, someone would have had to have deliberately put them there. And we have no answers from investigators on how the remains were separated and so far apart from each other.
Well, I do want to ask you more about what we do know here, and that is that Rex Heuermann has been charged with some of these murders in that area. What do we know about his next hearing? It's set for late September, I understand. What happens next in this case and the investigation?
Sure. Well, there is, as the prosecutor pointed out this week, mountains of evidence in this case. It's been going on for over a decade. There is a large discovery process. I think it was something like two drives or 4 drives with 8 gigabytes or terabytes of information. I mean, just a ton of information that has to be processed and looked at. So it's likely that the trial won't happen until next year. And you also have the possibility of further charges. Those bodies that were discovered on Gilgo Beach, and there were 4 of them, Heuermann has been charged with 3 murders out of those 4, and the prosecutor says they have substantial evidence connecting him with the disappearance of the 4th victim in that bunch that was discovered over a decade ago. So there could be more charges, further complicating the trial process. Aaron.
All right. Well, in just a couple of hours, former President Trump is going to make his first appearance back on the campaign trail after being arraigned and pleading not guilty to charges related to trying to overturn the 2020 election. He's in Alabama tonight, set to speak at a Republican dinner as the keynote speaker. Tomorrow, he goes to South Carolina to headline the party's Silver Elephant dinner there. New polling out today has the former president holding a big lead over his opponents in a key state. We're talking about Iowa. This is in the middle of his unprecedented 3rd indictment. Trump polling at 44%, with Ron DeSantis, the Florida governor, at 22% in Iowa, home to the first presidential caucus. Let's turn to NBC's Garrett Hake now. So, Garrett, this poll happened before yesterday's arraignment, obviously, but the reality at this point is that we've seen the former president's legal issues make him more popular with some Republican voters, right? I heard people outside the courthouse yesterday, where you and I both were, yelling that he's even more popular now. We love him even more. You're helping the Trump cause here. What are we expecting tonight?
Well, Aaron, you're exactly right. I expect the former president to lean into his legal battles. I mean, it is really an incredible thing to witness. These are things that would have taken down any number of presidential candidates in any number of cycles that have so far only made Donald Trump stronger, at least in a Republican primary. The fact that he has successfully got the entire Republican Party singing from the same hymnal, that somehow this is the weaponized Department of Justice going after him specifically, has made it very difficult for his rivals to figure out how to get an arm around how to attack him, or even how to draw contrast with him. I want to play for you a little bit of what Ron DeSantis, the Florida governor, said today when he was asked whether or not he thought the 2020 election was stolen. If you squint really hard here, Aaron, you can hear some criticism of Donald Trump. Listen to this.
I've said many times, the election is what it is. All those theories that were put out did not prove to be true. But what I've also said is the way you conduct a good election that people have confidence in, you don't change the rules in the middle of the game.
That is what amounts to a break from Donald Trump, to some contrast with Donald Trump on the issue of whether or not an election was stolen, and federal charges basically against the former president for his efforts on it were appropriate. That's the #1 rival to Donald Trump. And when you look into the polling, you see why this is a problem. In that same New York Times Siena poll, there's some back and forth about the question of, would you still support Donald Trump if he's convicted of a felony? And when you look at these numbers, only 45% of Republicans, this is a Reuters poll, said they would not vote for Donald Donald Trump if he was convicted of a felony. 35% said they would. 35% wins you primaries in most states in a multi-candidate field, Aaron. That's the problem for the rest of these Republicans.
And then there's the potential, Garrett, for another case here, right? Any day now, we do expect that the DA in Fulton County, Georgia, is going to announce one way or the other if her office is going to charge the former president in connection to efforts in that state to overturn election results. At this point, do we have a sense of how soon we might get that decision, how serious any potential charges might be when you compare them to the other charges that are already out there for the former president?
Well, look, we're in the window right now where it could happen next week or the week after. That's sort of the time frame where we expect to see some kind of decision made on this either way. The broad spectrum charges here are the same, but the data points are more specific to Georgia. I think what's interesting about this case are two things. Number one, it has probably the single most famous piece of evidence involving 2020 election interference claims. That's that call to the Georgia Secretary of State where Donald Trump says, I need you to find me all these extra votes. That's going to be a central piece of this case. The other thing that's different is you're going to likely see significantly more defendants in this case. This is a prosecutor who's an expert at RICO cases, sort of broad corruption cases like gang cases. Don't expect it to be just Donald Trump who gets indicted in Georgia if there are indictments in Georgia, Aaron.
All right, Garrett Haake for us today here in Washington. Garrett, thank you. Tonight, police now getting a chaotic scene under control in Manhattan. That's after a massive crowd started getting unruly during a giveaway event. The social media influencer hosting that event now in police custody. You're looking at some of the aftermath of what went on there in Union Square. But you see it all unfolding here. This was a bit earlier this afternoon. Swarms of people pushing, shoving each other, standing on cars and trucks and taxis you see there, throwing things. We don't know what caused it to sort of get out of control like this, but police say that he didn't have a permit for an event of this nature. That social media influencer we're talking about here. Thousands of officers from all over New York City called into this scene. WNBC, our affiliate in New York, reporting a lot of people got hurt. Nothing serious, we understand. No one had to go to the hospital. People gathering today for a big giveaway event hosted by Kai Cenat. He posted something, he has something like 6.5 million followers on Twitch and another 4 million on YouTube. This is now deleted. The deleted story that he posted earlier about the event, you see it here, was reportedly going to be a giveaway of a bunch of stuff, gaming consoles, gift cards. Ron Allen is joining me now. He's made his way to the scene there toward Lower Manhattan. Ron, it seems like police have sort of gotten the situation under control here. Talk to us about what you're seeing, what's happening right now.
Yeah, under control, Aaron, but not completely over. The police say they're still trying to disperse the crowd. And that's what they say has been the big problem, is that people haven't been following their commands to leave the area. They say they heard about this around 1:30 this afternoon. They saw the posts on social media inviting people to this giveaway. And they say, police do, that they've experienced this before, but nothing perhaps to this scale. And by 3:30, 4 o'clock, there were thousands and thousands of young people here. They say that the situation got complicated even more so because there was a construction site that was within Union Square. And they said that the young people in the crowd had shovels, axes, construction equipment, along with bottles and rocks and other things that were all flying through the air. So, yes, it is miraculous that nobody was seriously hurt. The officers also say that several police officers were injured trying to get things under order. Again, no one taken to the hospital. There have also been numerous arrests. They say that there was a city bus full of people who were arrested and that the bus was attacked as they were trying to take people off for processing. So a chaotic afternoon. Here's some of what the police just said about what happened. Take a listen.
The NYPD offered multiple, and I do mean multiple, opportunities for the crowd to leave. We tried to give them a means of egress for them to exit the park and exit the streets. After numerous warnings and after being assailed, hit with rocks and bottles and other debris, we started to make arrests to clear out the park.
Police said they showed restraint during this process. Again, numerous arrests. We don't have a number. It's also unclear whether the influencer, Kai Cenat, who organized this whole thing, whether and what crimes he may be charged with. The chief of police or the police officer who gave the briefings alluded to this, perhaps to a possible charge of inciting a riot, but we don't know about that definitively just yet. He is in custody and being questioned by authorities. But again, the bottom line, at this hour, the streets here relatively calm and things back to normal. Aaron?
Ron Allen live for us in Lower Manhattan tonight. Ron, thank you. We want to head overseas now. Ukraine tonight claiming a battlefield win on Russian soil. That's after a drone attack appears to have seriously damaged a Russian warship. NBC News has verified the footage you're seeing right here. It appears to show that drone zooming toward the Russian ship. The video cuts out suddenly, implying it exploded when it got close to the vessel. Russia claims it destroyed the drone and stopped the attack. But more video verified by NBC News telling a bit of a different story. You can see the ship here listing to one side and being tugged to a nearby port, sort of indicating that ship has some pretty serious damage. NBC's Matt Bradley is covering this for us and joins us now from Europe. Matt, in just the last few weeks, we've seen this attack on the warship here, obviously. There have been separate drone attacks in Moscow. Talk to us about the significance here for both sides as this conflict goes on, both the symbolic significance and otherwise.
Yeah, Aaron, I mean, I'm glad you're asking that question because the fact is this is a paradigm shift in the war, especially for Russian citizens who may have been apolitical before. They may have even been able to ignore a lot of the sanctions that were placed on them by the West. Now they're seeing bombs, they're seeing drones, they're seeing these boat drones or maritime drones that are attacking naval assets in Russia proper. And again, this is the important thing. This was not the first time that the Ukrainians have been able to attack Russian ships while they've been stationed at port. But those ports have been in Crimea, which was a Russian-occupied Ukrainian peninsula from back in 2014 when the Russians first invaded Ukraine. Now, the Ukrainians have shown that they're able to extend their power to Russia proper on a maritime basis. And we saw just a couple of weeks ago, in the past couple of months, we've seen repeatedly drone attacks against major government centers and business centers in Moscow. So no longer can the Kremlin claim that this is a war that's being fought solely in Ukraine, because the Ukrainians have successfully and consistently brought the battle right up to their doorstep. Aaron?
All right, Matt Bradley with us tonight, tracking this news involving Russia and Ukraine. Matt, thank you. We want to turn to the weather now, where emergency crews in Tennessee are out rescuing people who are trapped in their homes after some pretty serious flooding. You see in these pictures, water up to doors of buildings and other homes, cars almost fully underwater in some cases. And practically no matter where you live, you are going to be hit with some type of weather this weekend. The Northeast and Midwest could see some severe storms. We're talking heavy rain, wind, hail. That could create some dangerous conditions. And then from Southern California to the Florida Panhandle, almost 50 million people under heat alerts as those temps ramp up yet again. Multiple records could be shattered over this weekend. We want to turn to meteorologist Bill Cairns to break it all down for us. Bill, we've got this mixed bag of all things weather this weekend. What's the lowdown here? What do we need to know?
I think the Pacific Northwest is the only people that can be like, all right, we're good. Everybody else, for the most part, has something to worry about. So we've had severe storms rolling through the Northeast as we've gone throughout the afternoon and the evening. We've had some reports of downed trees and isolated reports of hail up to an inch and a quarter. And now these thunderstorms are pushing into New Hampshire. They're just about over with in the Adirondacks, but the southern tier of New York still dealing with some pretty good-sized storms, especially around Oneonta and the Cobleskill area. So there's Oneonta right there, and then Cooperstown's not far from there. And this line of storms is going to continue to push over Interstate 88 here shortly. The other area of strong storms, this is heading through central portions of New Hampshire. Not too much lightning with this, but there could have been some large hail with it about a half hour ago. And flash flooding. They've had way too much rain this summer in all areas of Vermont and New Hampshire. Rutland under a flash flood warning. And as far as the severe weather threat goes this weekend, Saturday we're talking Kansas City to Omaha. By the time we get to Sunday, we're going from Chicago all the way down to Nashville. And Aaron, we don't want to forget how hot it is either. It's still at this hour, feels like 111 in New Orleans in the shade. Not a pretty scene.
Yeah, I'm grateful we're at least not talking about hurricanes yet. I mean, it's August, so let's find some wood around here for sure. All right, Bill.
Yeah, we got them. By the way, the peak of the hurricane season is the first week of September. So every day that goes by without one is a good day.
Absolutely. Bill Cairns for us tonight. Thank you, Bill. Well, right now, writers are heading back to the negotiating table with the major Hollywood studios nearly 100 days since their strike started. But they are a bit skeptical about making any big breakthroughs right now. Why? Well, in an email to members, the Writers Guild of America writing, "We won't prejudge what's to come, but playbooks die hard." Studios shooting back, calling the union statement unfortunate, insisting in its words The only playbook is getting people back to work. Now, it happens as the head of one of the biggest studios, Warner Brothers, reports on the company's earnings call that the strike has saved the company more than $100 million so far. Dana Griffin joining me now from L.A. Dana, where do things stand? What do we know at this point? Are there any indications that the writers and the studios are making or can make some progress today with these talks?
Well, Aaron, I can say that it is very hopeful, considering it's been nearly 100 days since the writers went on strike, and they are finally getting back to that negotiating table. We are standing by, waiting for any updates that come out of that meeting. I can tell you, though, that the picket lines were very strong today, even outside of NBC Universal, where you had both the actors and writers on strike. They even had some lanes blocked off to make room for everybody that showed up today. And I spoke to one writer about whether he thinks, or whether he is optimistic that they could reach a deal. Here's what he said.
I think the attitude is cautious optimism. Eventually, we will reach a deal with the studios because strikes end. If they continue to refuse to engage with us and refuse to negotiate, we will remain on strike, period.
Now, Aaron, whether that strike ends today or in several weeks remains to be seen.
I want to ask you about the money here, too. We talked about how Warner Brothers says that the strike has actually saved that company a big chunk of money. Does that tell us anything going forward? Does it signal that the studios may not want the strike to end anytime soon, as some had predicted a few weeks back?
Possibly, but also you have the Warner Brothers CEO, David Zaslav. He said that we're in the business of making money, and he hopes that those negotiations talks resume. So I think at the end of the day, this is the entertainment business. They want to make money, and they want to get back to doing what they do best. So it's in everyone's best interest to try to get back to work. But let's take a look at the numbers. As you mentioned earlier, we've got a full screen to pull up so you can see just how much the strikes have impacted the economy. Cost of this strike could exceed $3 billion. I mean, just in L.A., the actor strike alone is costing the L.A. economy as much as $30 million a day. And you've got to understand that these are also impacting other jobs, whether you're a hotel worker, you're the dry cleaners, caterers. There's so many cities, New York and LA, that are taking hits from this. So it's in everyone's best interest to try to get to an agreement so that everyone can get back to work. Aaron?
All right, Dana Griffin for us in our LA bureau tonight. Dana, thank you. Appreciate it. A new jobs report today showing hiring in the U.S. is slowing down, but still sturdy, fueling hopes with investors that the Fed might leave interest rates alone at its next meeting. The economy added 187,000 jobs last month, slightly fewer than expected for the second month in a row. But economists say it could be some good news here because the overall number of layoffs is going down, signaling a stabilizing job market. Meanwhile, the unemployment rate fell to 3.5%, nearing the lowest level in the last 50 years. Our business and data reporter, Brian Chung, joining us down to help us understand what's happening here. So, Brian, walk us through these numbers today. Where did we see the most growth? Give us a sense of what this all means for the regular American.
And Aaron, a lot of numbers there were in this report. So let's contextualize it a little bit and reiterate. As you mentioned, 187,000 jobs. That's how many were added in the month of July. That's a little bit faster than the 185,000 that we saw in June. But interesting and important to note that Wall Street economists had expected 200,000 in the month. So this was a quote unquote softer report than some were expecting headed into this. But look, at 187,000, that pace is still what would be commensurate with a relatively healthy economy. There were times where we were adding 400, 300, 200,000 jobs a month, and economists are saying we don't usually tend to see those types of numbers, so this is a little bit more consistent with a normal growing economy. Now, for what it's worth, we also saw the unemployment rate tick down to 3.5%. That is certainly good news, especially when you consider that historically 3.5% over 50-year lows. The only lower number that we've seen than that is 3.4%. So, okay, where do we see the job gains in the month? Leisure and hospitality, think of jobs at bars and restaurants adding 17,000 in the month. Retail trade, jobs at the mall adding about 8,500. But not all sectors did gain in the month. Professional and business services, white-collar jobs in the office, that contracting by about 8,000. Could some of this be tech jobs? That's something we'll have to watch for, although financial services did add jobs in the month, Aaron.
And so all this, Brian, has some people wondering if this could be the thing that encourages the Fed to stop those interest rate hikes. What do we expect from the next meeting in September?
Yeah, Aaron, and as is the case with anything in financial markets, you have investors that are putting bets, and the bets show an overwhelming majority of investors saying they expect the Fed, after this report, to not raise interest rates any further. But one thing that the Fed is going to be watching very closely is this figure right here, average hourly earnings growth. How much more did people get paid in July of this year compared to July of last year? That figure is 4.4%. That's the same pace as we saw in June. And this is good news for workers that are now, for the first time in the summer, seeing the pace of wages increasing at a rate that's faster than the pace of overall price increases. The reason why: inflation is pacing at 3%, which means that your wallet is growing faster than the price tags at the store. That was not a trend that happened prior to the summer. I'm sure welcome news to a lot of Americans and to the Federal Reserve as well, Aaron.
Welcome indeed, Brian Chung. We appreciate it. Thank you. Well, the FDA is expected to decide by tomorrow whether to approve the first pill to treat postpartum depression. It's taken daily for 2 weeks and has shown promise in the clinical trials. Women with severe depression say that symptoms improved as early as 3 days after taking the first pill. Now, this medication could really increase access for mothers suffering from postpartum depression because it can be taken at home. The treatment that's already approved is actually an injection that requires a hospital stay, which for a lot of moms just isn't feasible. And it's important to note here, about 1 in 8 women experience symptoms of postpartum depression. Let's bring in NBC News medical contributor Dr. Kavita Patel now to help us understand what this all means. And so I guess that's the question. How big of a game changer would this be for moms?
Oh, it's huge. Having something that can affect so many women and is so common, 1 in 8 is probably an undercount, is a game changer in general. And when you think about the symptoms of postpartum depression, they're wide-ranging. They can present days to even months after the delivery, everything including restlessness, anxiety, and on the extreme, feeling completely disconnected from yourself, your baby, even potentially causing harm. So this is a big problem with a range of spectrum of symptoms. And as you mentioned, so far, all we've had has been an injection that's only used in severe depression, very expensive, takes 2.5 days in the hospital with intense monitoring, and is also just not feasible.
So we said that the FDA is looking at likely approving this. What has to be sort of figured out here? What are they considering when they get to this point of maybe approving?
Well, we got through the biggest hurdles, which were the clinical trials, and just establishing that this is safe and effective. That's really what the agency is looking for. And I think now what they're trying to think about is literally what would the guidance need to be? Should this be used in certain types of depression? What would they need to look for in terms of side effects? Every medication has side effects. This is an oral pill, as you mentioned, once a day, 14 days. We think this lasts a little bit past 45 days in terms of its effects, but the FDA is going to want to make sure that that's what we tell people when they take this. And all those side effects that we talk about, everything from nausea, dizziness, and vomiting, we want to make sure people understand up front. But it's great news, and I do feel that if this does get approved, which it looks like it will, this could be available in just weeks to months, which is great news for a lot of women going through this now.
Yeah, we'll be keeping an eye on this one for sure. Dr. Patel, we appreciate it today. Thank you. Coming up, a suspected murderer arrested in what New York police believe was a hate crime. Who they think was responsible later in the 5 things. And a surprising tactic today in a lawsuit against a Parkland sheriff's deputy. This is in Florida. We'll tell you why lawyers reenacted the 2018 school shooting there that killed 17 people. Stay with us. Wells Fargo facing new heat for mysterious phony bank accounts. That's in the 5 things. First, though, one of the deadliest school shootings in U.S. history. The Parkland, Florida school shooting was reenacted today. This is part of a civil lawsuit brought by the families of the victims. Ballistics experts firing up to 139 shots at the school today during this reenactment of the 2018 tragedy. Technicians recording the sound of the gunfire, trying to capture what that officer, Scott Peterson, heard during the 6-minute attack. The families are accusing Peterson of failing to protect their loved ones, and they're seeking unspecified damages. Now, he was acquitted in June of felony child neglect and negligence for failing to act during the shooting. That shooting left 17 people dead, 14 students and 3 staff members. The shooter, a former student, was sentenced to life in prison in 2021. Sam Brock has more now from Parkland.
For all day now, there has been a reenactment going on outside of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, where I am standing in the middle of the road. This has been closed throughout the day. You look at all the police lights behind me. They are just now opening things up. But the real issue here, 2 things going on unrelated here in Parkland. One of them, the fact that this reenactment contained live ammunition being used on an AR-15 type of rifle, the same kind that the shooter used on that tragic day of 2018 Valentine's Day. Why are they doing all this? As you said, it's because of a civil lawsuit against Scott Peterson, who is the school resource officer who was found by a jury here to be not guilty of felony child neglect. But the parents in Parkland still believe that he showed cowardice and did not step in and go into that 1200 building as kids were being killed. And they want him to pay literally for that. Now, the question becomes, why is this still going on? Because it's still a crime scene, and they are still gathering that reenactment and simulation to understand whether or not Peterson would have been able to hear where the shots were coming from. He said he could not tell that day. The thing is, though, you have 600 to 1,000 kids that were piling out of the school, cars in the parking lot. None of that was there today. So it really does beg the question, would this have been an accurate simulation? At the same time, an extraordinary event today with 9 delegates, or I should say 9 members of the congressional delegation, many from Florida, but also California, New York, and Pennsylvania, touring the hallways of Stoneman Douglas. It looks exactly the same right now as it did 5.5 years ago, which is to say there's blood-stained issues all over the hallways. You have bullet holes. You also have shattered glass and the signs of bullets where the shooter tried to go down from the 3rd floor and shoot outside. It didn't penetrate because it's hurricane-force windows. But these are the conditions these lawmakers are going in there and trying to understand the depth of this tragedy and also what more they can do, because Florida did lead the way when it came to a reform package here, whether it's red flag laws or also raising the age for getting long-range guns, long guns, I should say, to 21 years old. Other things around mental health services and coordination between agencies when it comes to threat assessment. They're trying to export those plans that have already worked here in Florida throughout the federal government and see if they can get lawmakers in Congress to act as well. Will that happen? That's the big question that remains to be seen. In Parkland, Sam Brock, NBC News. Back to you.
Let's get you over to the 5 things now our team thinks you should know about tonight. Number 1, police sources saying a suspect has been arrested in the death of O'Shea Sibley. He's the gay man who was stabbed to death at a gas station in Brooklyn, New York last weekend. Police say the suspect turned himself in at a police station. Investigators are still determining whether Sibley's murder was a hate crime. Number 2, more than 40 people say bank accounts were mysteriously opened in their names at Wells Fargo. One man is suing the company for stealing his private information, saying he never even had a Wells Fargo account, but he discovered one registered to him with thousands of dollars in it. A Wells Fargo spokesperson denied any allegations of illegal activity. Number 3, the armorer on the movie Rust waiving the right to a preliminary hearing. Hannah Gutierrez-Reed is charged with involuntary manslaughter in the death of the cinematographer who was accidentally shot and killed on the Rust set. She's pleaded not guilty. A date for the trial still has not been set. Number 4, the universities of Oregon and Washington expected to join the Big Ten Conference. That's bad news for the Pac-12, a former college sports powerhouse that's been around for more than 100 years, but soon it could be made up of just 4 schools. And number 5, Americans will get another shot to not win $1 billion. Nobody has hit the Mega Millions jackpot since April. It's now climbed all the way up to $1.35 billion. That's tied for the 4th largest lottery prize ever in U.S. history. I wish you luck, but we'll all be at work on Monday. Later in the show, China just can't catch a break from some intense weather. Why tens of thousands are now being evacuated. That's later in the Global. And in tonight's original, our exclusive interview with a woman whose story fueled vaccine conspiracies, and she... A Republican presidential candidate showing up in Ukraine. That's later in the Global. First, though, we want to bring you today's original with in-depth reporting on a topic we've been keeping an eye on. And tonight, we're taking you back in time to the late 2000s, when this woman went viral after claiming a flu shot may have caused a strange injury. Reports later outed her, calling her a fake, but her story had already taken off. And now she's speaking out for the first time, sharing whether she has any regrets and what she wants people to know about the anti-vax movement now as it grows in popularity today. She spoke to NBC's Brandy Zadrozny.
You might not remember Desiree Townsend, but what about the Flu Shot Cheerleader, a 2009 media sensation and early viral meme?
This bill was assigned with nothing goes out too.
She claimed she'd been injured by a seasonal flu shot, that it caused a twisted, jerking walk that disappeared when she ran or went backwards. The anti-vaccine movement was struggling, but saw an opportunity and embraced her as its new poster girl.
That's Desiree. Hi, nice to meet you. Desiree's not going to talk to you.
But they disappeared when Desiree was outed as a supposed faker.
Were you faking it? Definitely not. Unfortunately, I know the symptoms look bizarre.
Now, 14 years later, she's speaking out for the first time since the ordeal, motivated by the rise in anti-vaxxers in a post-pandemic world, and hoping to warn others who might get caught up in what she calls the anti-vaccine PR machine.
In the end of the day, these people are just going to use you.
COVID-19 wasn't on anybody's minds in 2009, but the country was in the grips of a different pandemic.
We have an update tonight on the swine flu virus.
Swine flu outbreak. Swine flu death.
While health officials encouraged the public to get an H1N1 vaccine, a group of activists, led by an actress, was doing the opposite.
Without a doubt in my mind, I believe vaccinations triggered Evan's autism. So I think they need to wake up and stop hurting our kids.
Those false theories about vaccines had been debunked, but Desiree's story was making the rounds.
It is one of the most talked about stories we've ever had on Inside Edition.
A pretty cheerleader ambassador for an NFL team, strangely disabled by a vaccine, was ratings gold. And Jenny McCarthy's organization, Generation Rescue, wanted to use it to bring attention to their cause. A crusade spreading the disproven theories that vaccines caused autism and that unconventional treatments could cure it.
I was young, I was 25, I needed help, and I just had these people come to me and said, well, we'll give you that help, but here's the cost. You have to believe what we believe.
Generation Rescue asked Desiree to star in an anti-vaccine documentary.
You need to sit up. Come on, just for a second.
It was never made, but the footage was left with Desiree, who shared it with NBC News. They took her to Dr. Rashid Buttar, a controversial osteopath popular for his advertised miracle cures that could supposedly detox patients.
Everything's going to be better, that the world will be amazing.
The unconventional treatments seemed to alleviate her symptoms, at least initially.
You're a miracle worker.
Anti-vaccine activists claimed victory. And in the Generation Rescue footage, they strategized about Desiree's future, even calling her the next Jenny McCarthy.
She's going to be able to help a lot of people. She's going to be able to make a huge ruckus.
But back home, when the cameras were off, Desiree still felt sick.
When you have nothing left, no other option, of course you're going to turn to anybody who would come to you and say, we can help you. I just didn't realize what the cost of that help was.
We reached out to Jenny McCarthy for comment and didn't hear back. Former Generation Rescue president Stan Kurtz told us via text he's been, quote, out of this space for a long time and didn't respond to further questions. Dr. Rashid Buttar died in May. His family didn't respond to requests for comment. And according to her medical records, Desiree continued to seek treatment for her condition. But then a series of new reports cast doubt on her story. One from Inside Edition was most damning. It showed Desiree playing with her dogs, walking normally and driving.
We've been trying to reach you and you have not been returning our phone calls.
Oh, I'm sorry.
What's going on? It looks like you've made a complete recovery.
Well, I wouldn't say complete recovery. I still have a lot of cognitive issues.
With that, much of the country had decided, it seemed, that the whole thing had been a hoax, and Generation Rescue dropped her.
I want people to know that I did not fake an illness. I am not a scammer. I am not a hoaxer. I'm not anti-vaccine. I'm not a liar.
But by then, the impact of Desiree's story was out of her control. Doctors and public health officials at the time warned about the power of a story like Desiree's. Dr. Paul Offit, director of the Vaccine Education Center at Philadelphia's Children's Hospital, discussed one account of Mac's vaccine hesitancy in an interview with PBS.
I spoke recently at a high school near here. There were about 200 people in the audience, and I asked them how many had gotten the influenza vaccine, and about half raised their hands. Of the half that didn't raise their hands, they said they didn't get it because on YouTube they saw a Redskins cheerleader say that she had gotten the vaccine and had a so-called dystonic reaction.
Now, almost a decade and a half later, he says anti-vaxxers still use personal anecdotes to boost their claims, whether they're true or not.
We're humans, we're compelled by story. We're not so compelled by statistics. We're not so compelled by data. So if you do studies showing that the influenza vaccine doesn't cause what you're seeing with Desiree Jennings, that's not nearly as powerful as her saying that it did.
And Desiree, pulled into the whirlwind back then, now regrets her impact.
If I caused anyone to not receive a vaccine or put their children at risk or themselves at risk, yes, I do feel an immense amount of guilt for that, but I really hope and pray that that didn't happen.
Desiree says her moment in the anti-vaccine spotlight has cost her jobs, relationships, and her reputation. And she no longer believes a vaccine is what caused her health problems.
I think I was already showing symptoms of this autoimmune disease. It's just that all of these variables came together in a perfect storm, and the timing looked like it was a vaccine, but it was not. It was correlation, not causation.
Desiree turned towards science. She graduated in 2019 from the University of California, Irvine, with a bachelor's degree in biochemistry and molecular biology. When the COVID vaccine became available, she took it, and a booster. But the COVID pandemic brought out hundreds of other people like Desiree, posting unverified accounts of strange reactions attributed, they said, to the vaccines. Generation Rescue shut down in 2019, but new leaders and organizations took its place, this time stoking fears over COVID vaccines. Now, Desiree hopes she can set the record straight on vaccines and warn others from joining the anti-vaccine movement. What would you say to people who get wrapped in to this industry?
I would tell them to run, because they're never going to benefit from that. You're going to be used.
Brandy Zadrozny, NBC News.
It really is a fascinating story when you consider the environment today that we're in. You can read more about this on NBCnews.com. You can see the headline right there on your screen. Still ahead, folks in Greece baking through a stifling heat wave right now. Their creative solution for their furry friends, that's later in the Global. And disaster averted at the Boston airport. Just how close two planes came to catastrophe. That's next. Well, tonight we are just learning how close two airplanes almost came to disaster. Take a look at the photo here. This is a screen grab from inside. This is a video from inside a JetBlue cockpit as that plane was landing in Boston in February. You can see there highlighted in the middle, a Learjet crossing right in front of the plane as it's taking off. The JetBlue pilots quickly pulled up, circled around the airport there. The NTSB says that private plane took off without permission. And as you can see by this map, the two runways intersect. Now, this comes as we've seen some other troubling flight issues this summer. A few days ago, passengers on a Delta Airlines plane were forced to exit on emergency slides. That's after the plane's tire popped when it landed. And then there was this scene also at a Boston airport where a United plane clipped the wing of a Delta plane. This happened on the tarmac. Just some of the close calls on runways and in the skies we've seen around the country as of late. Let's bring in Steve Patterson now. He's keeping an eye on this. So, Steve, what else do we know about what happened with this close call back in February? And what do we know about what's going to happen next?
Yeah, troubling incident, really, Aaron. This is from February 27th. We know about it because it's the final NTSB report. It talks about these two pilots. One is this 63-year-old Learjet pilot. He thinks that he's being cleared for takeoff when, in effect, he's really only being cleared to sort of taxi and line up on the runway. So we know that there is communication between him and air traffic control, and somehow he misinterprets that communication to believe that he's ready to go. And it ends up with the situation that you showed and sort of the diagram that you showed of just how close this was, within 30 feet of the ground. Thankfully, the JetBlue pilot has the sort of wherewithal to perform a maneuver to pull up suddenly, pull up the landing gear and make sure that these planes don't clip each other, leading to disaster. But it was a really, really close call. So the 63-year-old Learjet pilot issued a statement. He said to the NTSB, he said, "I cannot understand what happened to me during the clearance. The only thing that comes to my mind is that the cold temperature in Boston affected me. I was not feeling completely well, and I had a stuffed nose. My apologies." Seems a bit ridiculous when you hear that, but we don't know what factors went in here. And we're also hearing that he didn't even know what had happened, really, that this was this dangerous as a situation until he was making final approach to Fort Lauderdale. And then he was informed that he caused this big incident. And we're not hearing anything about disciplinary action at this time, Aaron.
Yeah, this just has you scratching your head on so many levels here, Steve. We keep seeing mishaps with flights like this, right? Who's responsible for the oversight of this? Are there any changes in place to try to avoid these sorts of things from happening?
Yeah, I think this is certainly, I don't know if I'd call it chronic, but it is noted specifically by agencies like the FAA, the NTSB, Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, all have made comments about this. And part of the reason that they're looking into is that in this post-COVID era, COVID really hit the airline industry hard. Pilots, are retiring and cycling in and cycling out. That also affects air traffic control, which has lost a lot of people and then sort of gained a lot of people again. So you have new people in places that are very, very important and have very specific jobs. And I just think it comes down to that. And I want to say, all of this, anything in an airplane is much safer than what I'm about to do, which is hop in my car and drive home. This is not something where I think people at home should be concerned about, but it is concerning to the larger flight community, and government agencies certainly are trying to figure out what's going on here. Aaron?
Steve Patterson for us in Los Angeles. Thank you, Steve. Well, NBC News covers hundreds of international stories every day, and because you couldn't possibly read, watch, or listen to all of them, our foreign desk has done it for you. We call this segment The Global. Out of China, tens of thousands of people were evacuated today as that country battles record-breaking rainfall. Officials say it could take a month for the water to recede in some areas. At least 22 people have died. From Ukraine now, Republican presidential candidate Chris Christie making an unannounced visit to Ukraine today. He met with President Volodymyr Zelensky in the country's capital. Christie voiced his support for Ukraine and said he wanted to get a first-hand look at what that country is going through. He is the second 2024 Republican candidate to visit Ukraine after former Vice President Mike Pence. And out of Greece, a zoo there is feeding its animals literal frozen meals. They're putting meat and fruit in blocks of ice. You see it right there. You can see the animals just licking away. It's raw meat, because that's what you feed a tiger or a lion. The heat wave there has really been just crazy. Temperatures hitting 108 degrees today. The country has experienced extreme temperatures and wildfires all summer. Still to come, robots. They're getting smarter, and they're raising fears that they could take jobs away from humans. But some companies are promising the opposite is happening. That's next. The robotics revolution is here, and with it are fears that automated technology will take jobs away from millions of working human beings. But the companies at the forefront of this revolution argue the opposite, that their technology will only create jobs for people, and better jobs at that. Companies like Chipotle already finding a use for some of this tech. Look at this, a robotic device helping to prepare the chain's trademark guacamole, removing the peel, pitting the avocado, even slicing it, and then a human employee jumps in to finish the job. It's not just food prep either. Advocates of robot tech say the possibilities are endless, with a big opportunity to turn delivery drivers, for example, into drone pilots and robot technicians. You're looking at one company's tech that does just that. CNBC's Kate Rogers joins me now. So, Kate, you've been looking into these companies, seeing how they're operating, what they're doing. What's their plan to revolutionize how we work?
Hey, Aaron. Yeah, we're here at Zipline in South San Francisco. The company is using robotics to change the way deliveries are made. It says to make them both more efficient and more environmentally friendly. Workers here at their manufacturing facility in San Francisco are working on parts for their fleet of autonomous delivery drones that have delivered everything from COVID vaccines to hospitals to e-commerce packages for customers of Walmart. Take a listen to the company's CEO.
Before, we were using a human to do one delivery at a time. Now we're training that human to maintain and manage a fleet of robots, so that human can now do 50 deliveries in an hour rather than 5. And that enables us to pay that human a lot more.
Zipline is looking to add 100 workers to its ranks, focusing on robotics, not just making them, but also running all of the logistics, because that's also done and managed in-house by their team here. So creating many jobs on that front as they look to kind of change the way that these deliveries are made. Aaron, back over to you.
So, At the same time, Kate, you know, we've talked to regular folks who are a little bit skeptical, right, about the long-term effects here. I get that the company is going to be more efficient in this way, maybe even save some money and hire some folks. But how does this all really benefit workers and not just eventually replace them like they're just temp workers while this technology is being developed?
Yeah, there's no doubt that certain jobs, of course, will be displaced by technology. But one example of how this could benefit workers is exactly what you talked about in the intro. The restaurant industry, which I cover for us at CNBC, has been extremely challenged in not only attracting but retaining workers to its ranks because it's just a tough labor market right now. So the Avocado is just one example of how they're testing out ways to make this work a little bit better for their employees. As you can see, Vivu Labs Avocado, it will peel and prep those avocados to then be made into guacamole. That is a repetitive task that can be very time consuming. It also be potentially dangerous for workers. So it takes some of that out of the equation so the workers can jump in when it's time to make that and they can focus elsewhere on the back of house kitchen or interface with guests and make the guest experience a bit more desirable because remember, not only is it a tough labor environment, but it's also a tough environment for companies. They need to maintain a competitive edge. Consumers are a bit more cautious about where they're spending their money right now. So you also want the guest experience to be really good. And if you're freeing up workers to focus a bit more on that, speed things up and make the entire experience a bit better, then that's a win-win for the companies. But one more thing I'd add on the labor shortage is that Vivu Labs co-founder told us that they're also struggling to find workers to actually come to their company and make the robots, right? So there's a labor shortage on the actual restaurant side, and then there's also a talent shortage there. So challenge on both ends. They're looking to jump in and make it a little bit easier for companies like Chipotle to speed things up and have a good experience for guests.
All right, Kate Rogers for us in San Francisco from CNBC. Kate, thank you. And that is a wrap for this hour. We appreciate you joining us tonight. I'm Aaron Gilchrist in for Hallie Jackson. Top Story picks up our coverage right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.